lost my husband, my business, and my job in a very short period of time. For a while, I truly didn't even know who I was anymore. Today, I want to share that story, not for any kind of sympathy, but for maybe someone else out there who feels like their life completely fell apart and they just don't know how to begin again. This is my life after loss. And now I'm rebuilding something better than ever. Hi there. Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to do a little story time, a little bit of background about who I am and where I came from. And we're going to start this story back in 2020. I was a happily married woman in my late 40s. I have two wonderful children, adult children, and a granddaughter. My life felt full. My husband and I had been together for 21 years, married for 7, and we were the best of friends. We did everything together. We ran errands, we went out for dinners, we traveled, we had date nights every Saturday, and life was full. I owned a brick and mortar business in the beauty industry, and my husband owned an online business and worked from home. Everything was normal and steady and safe. And then everything changed almost all at once. When the world shut down, so did my business. At first, it kind of felt like a bump in the road, something we would just get through. I took a job at a local hospital, a temporary position, and while I worked there, my husband continued to run his business from home. A few short months later, my husband fell very ill. He was rushed to the ER and his body began to shut down. He experienced internal bleeding and fell into a coma. Because of the COVID restrictions, I was not allowed to be there, and I had to just stay at home and wait for news. It was honestly terrifying. He was diagnosed with a condition called NASH, which is basically non-alcoholic end-stage liver failure. I had never even heard of that before. Over the next several months, my life became ICU rooms, waiting rooms, conversations with doctors, and I had no idea whether or not he would survive. One morning, I'd been called to the ICU where he was being cared for. They were going to do a procedure on him, and they wanted me to meet them there so they could have a conversation about the results of the procedure. And while I was waiting, they called a code for the ICU. And because I worked there, I knew exactly what that code meant. Code Omega. My husband was experiencing internal bleeding again and went into cardiac arrest several times. They got him back, and he was back in a coma again. In that moment, that bump in the road turned into a crater. During this time, businesses began reopening, and I knew I could not keep mine going. I did not have the mental capacity anymore. So I contacted someone who had once mentioned that they would want to purchase my business if I ever wanted to sell. And I told her if she put the lease in her name, I would hand her the keys. That business had cost me my life savings. And that was it. It was gone. My husband remained in the hospital for 2 years. He spent months in a coma and finally woke up, but he was unable to walk or read or take care of himself in any way. I worked when I could, and I spent the rest of my time at his side. He eventually learned that he needed a liver transplant and also found out that he didn't qualify because he had suffered a brain injury from the cardiac arrests, and that was it. There was no help for him. Shortly after that, he was transferred to palliative care, and not long after that, I lost my job. It felt like every piece of stability in my life had disappeared. I took another job simply to pay the bills. I would work my shift and then drive out to the hospital to see him every day. And over time, I could see him fading. One Saturday after a short shift, I arrived just in time to feed him lunch. He didn't want to eat. He didn't want to listen to his music. He was restless. And within the hour, he passed away. But he waited for me. I took 4 days off and went straight back to work. I was numb. I had been in survival mode for 2 years, and quite honestly, I just didn't know what else to do. I hated that job. And I hated the life I was living. And one day something just shifted. I realized that I had just spent 2 years fighting an illness that I'd never even heard of. And I gave everything to the person that I loved to give him the best end of life that I knew how. And I realized that if I wanted a better life for myself, I was going to have to fight for it. So I quit. I quit that job I hated. I was done riding in the passenger seat. It was time for me to drive. I took 3 months off to grieve. Not just my husband, but everything I had lost and the life we had planned. I was exhausted and broken. So I started with one small step. Every morning, I got up and showered and made my coffee. And then I did my hair and my makeup. That was it. That was my first step. It wasn't even about vanity. It was about remembering who I was. And one small step led to another. I didn't rebuild all at once. I chose the next right step for me. And over time, that led to a job I love, emotional stability, deeper spirituality, and a happiness I didn't think was possible again. I started this channel, Life After, because I want people to know there is life after loss. I'm still rebuilding and still becoming. But I want this to be a place where no one feels alone in their after. If you're in your own after, I hope this channel reminds you that you're not broken. You're becoming. In my next video, I want to talk about what happens after the crisis. When everyone goes back to their own lives and yours is completely different. Widowhood, identity, learning who you are when everything familiar is gone. Thank you for sitting with my story. If this resonated with you, I would love for you to subscribe and walk this journey with me. This isn't a channel about grief or loss. It's about growing from it and finding hope, healing, and happiness. This is Life After, and I'm so glad you're here.